Greetings, everyone. It's Dr. Mordecai, and thank you so much for joining me for this episode of Discovering Your Mission with Dr. Mordecai. On today, my guest, the legendary Dr. Kevin Kruger, retiring outgoing president of NASPA. Over 40 years of service in higher education, 30 years of service to NASPA. Dr. Kevin Kruger has had not only a national, but a global impact in the lives of so many educators through student affairs and outside of student affairs. As we talk about advocacy, policy, removing barriers, creating new infrastructure, the understanding of what does it mean to be an entrepreneur in higher education, Dr. Kevin Kruger has lived that and so much more. And even though he's retiring from NASPA, I know that so much more is in store for Dr. Kevin Kruger. Now, here's the interesting thing. When I conducted this interview with Dr. Kruger, we knew that he was retiring, but we didn't yet know who would serve as his replacement with the NASPA organization as president. Well, I'm proud to share with some, but I'm sure many already know, Dr. Amelia Purnell, who's also been a guest on Discovering Your Mission with Dr. Mordecai. Be sure to check out that episode. Has now been named the incoming president of NASPA as of July 1st, 2024. I certainly enjoyed and learned so much. I learned new things, new aspects of Kevin's life that I didn't know, and it led into him crafting so beautifully, like only Kevin Kruger can do, his learned wisdoms, his knowledge that he was so gracious to share with us through this episode. Without further ado, my interview with Dr. Kevin Kruger. Thank you so much for joining me for Discovering Your Mission with Dr. Mordecai. Let me tell you, this is an individual who I have looked up to for years. I remember really realizing that, number one, being told for the first time I was a student affairs professional, but then learning about this organization named NASPA, where all of the student affairs professionals grow and have a community and evolve in the space. And then watching this man on a stage that I never thought I would get a chance to meet, named Dr. Kevin Kruger, who just has been a pinnacle, has been the living example of what excellence in student affairs and the profession of higher education looks like. And now to have him on my show, I'm absolutely honored. Everybody, I'm introducing to you Dr. Kevin Kruger. Kevin, how you doing, man?
I'm fantastic. How about yourself?
I'm doing all right.
Great to be here. I love your videos. I've watched a bunch of them. Great interviews. Good people. So I'm very honored to be a part of this.
Well, thank you. And I can't say thank you enough for who you are, for what you've done, all the paths that you created for others. And let's just kind of jump into it, Kevin. I've been reading up on your bio in preparation for today, and just would love for you to tell and share with the audience, where did this love for student affairs and higher education first began? I know that before you worked for NASPA, you worked for the University of Maryland College Park, and then you worked in Baltimore County, and then you started in a role with NASPA. But just kind of walk us through, where did this love come from?
Yeah, I love this question because I do love the work we do. I'm energized by it every day. I've talked to some people and I said, they're literally, and certainly at NASPA, there hasn't been a day that I have come to work, remote or in person, that I haven't looked forward to that day. And as I think about that, I think you have to go back to your roots, right? So I was a first generation college student, and I didn't even know what a major was. I picked my major when I saw a sign at the college fair with a list of majors, and the first two listed were history and political science. So when somebody asked me what my major was, what I want to be a major, I'm like, history and political science. I ended up majoring in history and political science. That's how it goes when you're a first gen student. You don't even know how to get things done. But student affairs people interacted with me from the very beginning. My RA, my hall director when I became an RA, my orientation director, and I became a little bit more of the man that I was to become at that point in my life. I made it through college, even though the odds at that point were against me. Right away, I wanted to create that sense of giving back to other people. So I started with student affairs for the very reason most of us started, is we believed in the power of what we do and how we can influence the lives of others. We can change lives. And that is an incredibly privileged thing to be able to do. And then when I, fast forward, I had a fantastic student affairs career and had really wanted to be a vice president of student affairs, and then have this opportunity to come to NASPA. in 1994, 30 years ago. And I was going to do it for 2 years. Liz Nuss was the executive director. She convinced me to apply for this job and said, I found it when she offered me the job. I said, I'll do it for 2 years because I want to go back to a campus. But what I then fell in love with is the opportunity to think about issues, not at the campus level, but at the global higher ed level. And the idea that NASPA could be an engine of change in the field and also create a foundation of knowledge and expertise and perspective that would help future student affairs folks thrive. And that is really what's energized me ever since I started at NASPA. It's a very entrepreneurial organization. And I've had the privilege of being able to kind of move NASPA in different ways to meet what the emerging needs were for the profession. So that's how I got into it. And I haven't stopped loving it. Every day, just like your day, is different. And instead of, I don't work with students anymore, right? So my joy comes from the relationships I have with my staff and folks like yourself, and seeing the good work that we're doing, trying to change lives, trying to affect both in aggregate and population level, and as well as individual students whose trajectory will take them on to amazing things, and we can be a part of that journey.
Thank you so much for that, Kevin. Let me ask you this. I can only imagine, and if I've got this right, you're talking 45 years of history of you working in higher education. You've got,
crazy.
I could only imagine the lessons that you've learned over 45 years.
I have a few.
Do you have a few that you could share with us before you release what I'm sure is going to be the book and the master class that I'm going to sign up for? But what can you kind of share with us lessons learned? Yeah.
So, if you think about over that time, and a lot of these lessons really come from listening to people like yourself. So, one is this, managing prosperity is exciting. When things are going great, it's super fun. When resources are coming in and students are coming in, and when you have that, it's super exciting. Managing decline is hard. And I say that as a preface to something I'm sure we'll talk about. What's the next decade look like? But we're kind of in a period where constraints are emerging, and I think that's difficult. But it also is the time when we really need leadership, right? So that's something that leadership matters. College presidents matter, vice presidents matter, people who live and do their work with a sense of integrity, that matters. Okay. Second thing, and this has never failed me: treat every single person with dignity and respect. It's a simple thing, right? It's a spiritual thing. You just treat people with dignity and respect. People will do amazing work when you treat them that way. It doesn't seem hard, but when you talk to people, it's amazing how many people don't feel like they get that from the people around them, their supervisors, their institution, whatever it might be. Third thing, as a leader, surround yourself with the smartest people you can. Hire really good people, and don't ever be intimidated by the fact or bothered by the fact that they have sunshine around you. Like somebody told me early on, there's plenty of sunshine to go around you. You as the president, the leader, the VP, you don't have to take it all. Give it out. And you'll get quadruple the returns, right? So I've been gifted to have like super teammates around me, my vice presidents, my AVPs, right now, some of the smartest people in this field. I had the same experience in other parts of my career. And I'll tell you what, something that Gwen Dungy really taught me as a leader. When she was at that time, they called it executive director. Some of her colleagues were like, "How do you let Kevin he's always sat there speaking. He's getting all this visibility. Don't you think he's going to take your job and want your job?" And Gwen never had a problem with that. And that allowed me to kind of become my own self and my own leader. I wanted to do that for other people as well. And I always have, but that was really an abject lesson about, being the president doesn't mean you have to get all the sunshine. Give it out. And empower other people, and you will be a better organization. So I love when my staff are out speaking and keynoting and presenting, interviewed in the Chronicle. That's the power of our organization, that we can have so many people be leaders in the field as opposed to just me.
I love it, Kevin. I love it. So many nuggets of wisdom there. Let me ask you this: with 30 years now of serving NASPA, or nearly 30 years of serving NASPA, you've recently made the announcement that it's time to retire. And I'm just curious to know, What did you feel like you checked all the boxes? Do you feel like you've done everything you can? What's led to this feeling of? Because I remember when I saw the announcement myself, I
Yeah.
says I can't even imagine a NASPA without Kevin. So why
It
now,
is hard to
Kevin?
imagine, right? I mean, at 30, yeah, I mean, literally July 1st of next year, probably when I step down at the last, I turn the keys over, it'll be 30 years. A couple things. I think I have one of the best jobs in higher education. Now, there are other good jobs, but I think I have one of them. And I just don't want to clog it up. I think it's time for someone else's turn. Just like Gwen stepped aside and I had a turn, it's somebody else's turn. And I don't want to be that person who's doing this job into their 70s and, create an opportunity for somebody else to have one of the best jobs in higher ed. I've had that shot. I also, I think when history is written about NASPA's trajectory, sort of this trite saying, right time, right person, right time. What I did is help NASPA expand its portfolio from what it was. We had 15 staff, 17 staff when I started as president in 2012. Now we have 95. Not this amount, but this reach. We were a $5 million organization. Now we're a $22 million organization. That's not just about the numbers, but it's about my goal with NASPA when I became president was how can we increase the appreciation of what we do amongst our colleagues, presidents, CIOs, advancement officers, business officers. How can we increase people's understanding of what student affairs does in the media? So all that was part of the growth of NASPA, and so I was at the helm for that with my team. And now it's time for another phase. Something else will happen, and somebody else will take NASPA and run with it. So I wanted that opportunity. Second thing, for all of us, COVID was hard. I mean, keeping NASPA and everybody employed throughout that pandemic was enormous amount of stress. And it takes a toll on us, right? It takes that kind of responsibility takes a toll on us. And I think in some ways that maybe made me come to a decision of retiring a little earlier than maybe I thought I might. And the last thing, I've had a great career, but I have a lot of hobbies. I have things I want to do. I'm want to be golfer. I golf, but I want to be better. I want to learn how to fly fish. I want to learn how to play guitar. I want to read a book that is not about higher education. I want to sit on a Sunday on my deck and read a book, and spend more time with my family, my wife, Lisa, my kids, and our friends. So I have, I'd like to, not set the alarm. I mean, I get up every morning at 5 a.m. I'm one of those CEOs that thinks the best work is done in the 3 hours at the beginning of the day. I'd like to spend those 3 hours, perhaps enjoying my view from my house, reading, that kind of thing. So that's my summary of why I'm retiring.
Thank you for sharing that, Kevin. Thank you for sharing. I'm sure a lot of folks are going to appreciate hearing that, and as well as your reflection as you think about and in reflection, looking back, thinking about Lisa, thinking about your children. I just want to say thank you to your family for sharing you with us for all these years. And good luck with the golf. Good luck with the golf. Good luck with the fly fishing, and good luck reading a book of your selection. Let me ask you this:
Yeah,
what advice?
I will say one more thing. I'll just say one of the things that I will say is you want to retire and give the new person all the space they need to run with and be successful, right? So at the same time, I don't want to disappear. So I am still thinking through what I want to do in sort of the next part of my career. Some people call it the encore part of my career. Maybe it's writing. I do have a lot to say. I've been around for a long time. So I do have a voice that I might be able to say things I couldn't say in this job, but not get in the way of the new NASPA president. So I am trying to sort that out, know what that is. But you will see me in the future in some fashion.
All right. You heard it first. Let me ask you this, Kevin. What advice do you have for the next generation of student affairs professionals? There is so much disruption that's being experienced in society and in higher education. I remember you giving a demographics report years ago, and it just enlightened me to truly what was happening in and around us. So much is happening.
Yeah.
What advice do you have?
So something I've said, and I really believe in some, and as I speak with audiences, is the age of specialization in student affairs is coming to an end and should. That we need to move past the siloed specializations of our functional areas and move towards being generalists, because it's the generalist skills that are going to be necessary to thrive in this field, right? If you're going to be economic resources constrained, we may even see some contraction in positions. People not going to be I want to say do more with less. We're simply going to have to do branch out of our specialist areas, and so generalist skills are going to be really critical. I think the future is going to be more generalists in student affairs than specialists. Now, we'll have clinical psychologists doing counseling. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about how we serve our students in a broad-based way. So that's the first thing. Second thing, every single student affairs person has to be committed to student success. And that is the future of our profession. It's not crisis management. COVID taught us the wrong lesson. It's not being at the front line of the next crisis. Yes, that helped us, that enabled us to be successful during COVID, but our future is student success. We have to be unified and committed with our academic colleagues to ensuring that we make real progress in closing attainment gaps for low-income students, first-generation students, Black students, Latinx students, Indigenous students, and some portions of the API community. Those gaps have been sticky, persistent over decades, and we need to close those gaps. That's going to take a concerted effort, and we're going to need generalists to do that. I think student affairs people can play a unique role in working with students who historically have had barriers to advancing and persisting and completing. So, last thing, every single student affairs person is on the front line of the mental health crisis. You can't avoid it. That mental health crisis is not going away. It's going to be with us. It's a hallmark of this generation. Whether you're working in student activities or the union or admissions or advising, or obviously in the mental health, in the counseling side, you're a mental health professional. We have to help our professionals understand that. So this is what you sign up for. The work is enormously rewarding, but it's going to be difficult. We're going to have resource challenges. This is not going to be the easiest decade of our field coming up, but the payoffs can be enormous. Just look at social mobility as one criteria, right? Which now the USA, the News World Report's included in their rankings or ratings. But don't we want young people, no matter where they were born and what economic condition they're born, to have the potential to rise above where they are? That's kind of the American dream. But this is not a pull up your bootstraps conversation. This is how do we create pathways for that to happen, right? So somebody born in the lowest quartile of income has the potential to rise above that and change their family's trajectory forever, right? That's the future we have to imagine. And it's going to take some hard work to do that. We have the science behind it. We have not been able to put that science in place at enough institutions across the country. And that, I think student affairs are going to be a part of that. That's their future.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I'm going to insert a question here just because I've got to ask you this, Kevin. I remember at one point in time, in student affairs, it was the question about could college and university presidents come from student affairs? And based off of what you've just described, it is so much of what we have already been engaging for a number of years. And now in these college presidencies, these university presidencies, you've got student affairs professionals. I just want to create a space for you to share. Do you continue to see, do you forecast seeing more student affairs professionals in the presidency, or just your thoughts about student affairs professionals moving into the presidency?
Yeah. Well, so let's just start with you and I both could name 30 at least highly effective college presidents who have a student affairs background. So it's not like there's no mystery about whether the student affairs folks can be successful in those roles. That's already established. And I think we're seeing more institutions interested in looking at student affairs background because think of what we bring. Of the top 10 issues on a president's agenda for the cabinet, 7, 8 of them are student affairs issues. That doesn't mean that academic affairs provosts don't make good presidents. They do. Right. But we will continue to be in that mix and add fundraising in there, and add the delicate way that we now have to manage the political discourse that's happening in our country and how it affects our students. Student affairs people have a unique way of also managing that as well. So I think that we're going to see more. Now, having said that, I do think that as you know, one of the challenges is, what have you done in your career that will give you the credibility with faculty, and your ability to lead faculty? Because that's the one place that can be, challenged, I think, in some fashion. You have to look at your own scholarship. You have to look at your own teaching, and you have to somehow develop an understanding of the roles of faculty, the issues of shared governance, and some of the challenges that faculty are facing in order to be effective in that and as a college president. So, but student affairs people, clearly, and again, we can name 30 easy that are just thriving and bringing real success to their institution, and it's super exciting. Every time I see, every time, I'll tell you, this is personal. Every time I see a student affairs person get a college presidency, I'm just like, yeah, go get them. Because that helps the whole field, right? It's just another example of elevating the work that we do in a very different way. And when they're successful, it's just fantastic. So, I love that part of our work, that we're seeing that kind of leadership and that kind of potential for folks in their career. It's awesome.
I appreciate that, my friend. Let me create a space before I ask my last question, just in case, because there was so much in the question regarding the advice you had for the next generation.
Yeah.
You can already talk about the future of higher education, but let me just create a space in case there was more that you wanted to share regarding your thoughts on the future of higher education. Yeah,
so I am a glass half full person, Mordecai. So I tend to be optimistic about things, and I'm optimistic about student affairs. At the same time, this is going to be a difficult decade. It's all for all the reasons that are reported on a regular basis. The obvious things. Enrollment and the resulting fiscal challenges are going to be difficult for higher ed, not just student affairs. Look what's happening at Toledo and West Virginia and the Connecticut State Colleges, and it's all over the country. Some places are going to fare better than others, right? Obviously, institutions in the border states are doing better. But it's going to be. But even at our most elite colleges, we're seeing constraints in resources because the pressure on tuition, inflation is pushing up. So this is going to be a time of fiscal constraints. That's the first thing. But the thing I'll tell you, the thing I didn't talk about before, the most concerned about is how the country's challenges around discourse and dialogue are finding their way onto the college campuses in ways that I think are really troubling. And I'm very concerned about how it feels in some cases like we're reversing decades of progress of ensuring that paying attention to equity and diversity and inclusion, which become core values of what we do, are now sometimes illegal in some states. You can lose your job by being a student affairs educator who has a core value and believes in those core values. And so how do we continue to serve our students? This is the hard thing. Our students, that doesn't matter whether you're in a red state, purple state, blue state, they all want the same thing. They want this experience. They want to be exposed to difference. They want to be exposed to dialogue. They want equity. That every survey of students says they demand it, and yet we're in a position where we can't do that. And so I hate that higher ed has been dragged into this sort of culture war that we're in the midst of in our country. And I feel so. As a white man, I have the privilege of not having to experience this on a day-to-day basis, but I feel for my brothers and sisters who are doing this work on campus and whose work has been marginalized or pushed aside or eliminated. And I think that's a real challenge. And so I worry what does the future hold for the profession, the student affairs profession that is the most diverse part of higher education, right? So we have built that with pride. The NUF program has been a big part of that, for example. And so we have this profession that is by far the most diverse of any sector of higher ed. And at the same time, the very things that allowed that to happen are being challenged at the academy. So I worry about this a lot. I'll tell you, as a personal anecdote, I get asked to do speeches. I'm on college campuses. And this has never happened to me before, where someone has invited me to campus and said, if you could just not do your DEI thing, that'd be great, because that's not going to go over real well here.
Wow.
And I don't know I don't know what to do about that. I can't not say something about it because it's such a core part. Like you think about I mentioned all the, being a generalist and student success and mental health, but the work we do around supporting students across multiple identities is so important. And we know it makes a difference, right? If you think about the suicide ideation for transgender students, for example, well documented. So the work we do with transgender students on campus to help them create a sense of belonging and safety is so important. And we'd say the same about Black students. Black students, we know Black students who experience racism on campus, acts of racism on campus, or systemic racism on campus, they perform at a lower level. They drop out at higher rates. So the work we're trying to do to create safe, supportive, inclusive environments that recognize systemic racism and do a good anti-racism work on campus and acknowledge white privilege when it's relevant. All that work is super important to helping advance students. So if that's called into question, how do we do our work? So long answer to short question, I am very concerned about that part of our future.
And I am as well. Let me ask you, this is my final question for you, Kevin.
Yeah.
And as you know, the name of the show is Discovering Your Mission. And so I love to close out each episode by asking my guests what their personal mission statement is and why. And so I would love to hear your mission statement and why this time. Yeah,
I said one of them before is just, treat everyone with dignity and respect. That I just start there. I just believe that is the way we should operate in our world. And so that's the first thing. Second thing is use my privilege. I may have been a first generation college student, but I've got an enormous amount of privilege now and have had in my career. I use that privilege to uplift others, create opportunities for other people, open doors for other people. Never look at life as a zero-sum game where, it's about collecting status or things or opportunities, open those doors. That's important. And if you spend any time with me, smile as often as possible. I try to be optimistic. I smile a lot. I laugh a lot. I try to bring that kind of energy and joy to other people as well. Sometimes we are saving lives. We really are. But a lot of times we're not. And so looking at the difference between the thing, when we're saving lives, but a lot of times we can bring joy to the world in some ways. And I think that's important as well. I know in a world sometimes that's deprived of joy. So those are things that matter to me. And they're always about sort of helping other people, be the best people they can be. That's what people did for me. I can name one supervisor who didn't, but every other supervisor I've ever had has allowed me to be my best person. I live that life. I live that kind of want to pass that legacy on to others, and that's how I live my life.
Dr. Kevin Kruger, on behalf of so many, thank you for who you are. Thank you for accepting the challenge to serve in higher education. Thank you for how you have used your privilege, used your platform to create awareness and create new opportunities for others. Thank you so much for the sacrifices that you have made in the advancement of this work. We appreciate you.
Thanks, Mordecai. It's great talking to you. Take care.
Dr. Kruger, once again, thank you so much for your time and wisdom shared. If you've watched previous episodes of Discovering Your Mission with Dr. Mordecai, you would then know that at this point in the show, I'd like to share with you my 3 key takeaways. Now, certainly in this interview with Dr. Kevin Kruger, there were so many key takeaways, but here are my 3 that I personally found that resonated with me the most. This very first one is an episode in itself. It's a book in itself, but let me just give you this key nugget that Dr. Kruger shared with us. He talked about, number 1, managing prosperity versus managing decline, understanding the difference and the difference that those 2 errors, those 2 realities require of leadership. Everything is fine when enrollment is growing and you got fundraising efforts are underway and it's all great and you got new buildings being built and new companies are coming into the community. But what do you do when the major employers in your community begin to close up shop and they're moving on? What do you do when demographic shifts are significantly impacting your enrollment, which is impacting your bottom line, which is impacting your ability to impact and advance the mission, the institutional mission, like originally created and crafted for? Now we're managing in the midst of decline. And Kevin talked about the difference. I would say it's the next era of higher education. There is so much disruption that's currently underway, and the skill sets and the commitment that will be required of educators in this next era are going to be that much more impactful. And so thank you, Kevin, for that nugget. That's an episode in itself. Secondly, we heard Dr. Kruger talk about striving to add value to the mission. He gave so many different examples in his own professional life about how he advanced, did more, optimized. What something originally was, he grew it to become something greater. How he increased the portfolio, how he utilized his entrepreneurial spirit to grow NASPA into the juggernaut, the impact that it is making in the lives of so many globally today. He talked about adding value to the mission. Last but certainly not least, Dr. Kruger talked about, despite the political and cultural fight underway, that students still want equity and opportunity. And what are we going to do as educators? That despite whatever may be playing out in our respective states and our respective communities, that we are still committed to providing education for all. We are still committed to ensuring that we are honoring individuals for who they are in the seats in which they sit, and understand the honor that we have to serve them, but the responsibility of creating social and economic mobility for them and their family. Thank you so much for your time on today. I certainly hope that you took so much from this episode. I certainly did as well. Please be sure to subscribe, follow. It's drmordecai.com. Go over to the newsletter, subscribe for new content so you can stay up to date with all that's coming out that's new and fresh. Thank you so much for your time, everyone. Take care. See you soon.